I find it fascinating that when I look at the back end of this podcast behind the scenes, of all the many thousands of people who listen to this show every single month, so few of them have actually hit that follow button, and even fewer have ever left us a rating or a review. If you enjoy the podcast and you get value out of it, then I would ask that you do us a solid and just take a small moment to hit that follow button. And if you want to go just one little step further, take a second to rate and review the show. It means nothing to you, but it means everything to me. And you just taking a small amount of your time to support the show is going to allow me to expand the reach of this podcast, bring it to more and more people, and continue to bring you more and more value every single week. So wherever you are right now, just take one moment, tap that follow button, and if you want to go just a little step further, leave us a rating and a review. Thank you so much for listening in and supporting the show. Thank you for being here today, and let's dive in. Hey everybody, welcome to the Conscious Love Show. Whether you are single, you are in a relationship, or you're healing a broken heart, this show is here to inspire you, to remind you how beautiful, lovable, and amazing you truly are, and to give you the practical tools and insights to navigate from wherever you are right now to the loving relationship that you so deeply want to have. My name is Shane Kohler. I'm a certified transformational coach and trainer with over a decade experience helping people release their trauma and open their hearts to love. I've delivered seminars all over the world, coached thousands of people through my online platforms and programs, and every week I'm coming straight to you with the hottest insights and the best teachers around, bringing you powerful resources and profound conversations to heal your relationship with love, dating, and yourself. I'm so grateful you're here, and if it's your first time, welcome. You can count on me to always show up for you with my very best and a commitment to learn and grow myself so I can serve you to my maximum ability. Thanks so much for tuning into the show. I've got some awesome things planned for you today. So without further ado, let's dive in. All right. Hello, everybody. Hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Conscious Love Show podcast. Shane Kohler on with you today. Pleasure as always. Look forward to diving into today's conversation. Today we're talking about the core feminine needs and why men struggle to meet them. You know, in today's conversation, I want to just validate, first of all, the ladies who are listening. And I know so many of you have been in and out of relationships with men, probably all of you to some degree. Even if maybe you're in a really great relationship now, I know that maybe in your past you've been through ups and downs with this, right? And there are these really honest, sincere, heartfelt, vulnerable needs that in truth we all have, right? It's not just women, but today I want to really acknowledge the feminine needs, right? Those deep, heartfelt, honest, true, vulnerable feminine needs that so many of the men in your life have not been able to meet or known how to meet those. And I just want to start by acknowledging that and validating that. I see that and I hear you. And, you know, I talk to so many women from all around the world all the time. And I hear that the men in your life are not always in a place where they are able to show up for you in the way that you need them to, where they are able to respond to those most sensitive, vulnerable needs that you have in a way that really supports you and makes you feel safe and makes you feel whole. And so I want to start today by just acknowledging that for all the ladies and validating that and saying that I hear you and I understand where you're coming from with that. And it's real and it's true. And I know maybe a lot of men in your lives have gaslighted you and said you're too emotional or you're too crazy or, you know, you're too difficult or, you know, you need to tone it down. And I want to start today by saying you're not too emotional. You're not too crazy. You're not too difficult. You don't need to tone it down. This is real. This is true. This is honest. And I think that the feminine needs that we're going to talk about today actually have a way of awakening the planet when they're fully expressed, when they're held with power, when you are not apologizing for them or trying to dim them down. They have a way of penetrating into a man's soul and calling something more from him. And that's something that historically, and I think men now more than ever are becoming available to that, but historically it's something that men haven't been available for. And it's something that historically women have had to really diminish and withhold, not just because it was uncomfortable, but literally for their own safety. And so, it may not seem like it, but truthfully, we're in a place today where there's more permission than ever. And again, I know for you ladies, you may not feel that way, because just because there's more permission than ever doesn't mean there's unlimited permission, right? There's still resistance. And at the same time, I think we are becoming more conscious as human beings. We are growing, we are evolving. I think now more than ever, men are getting in touch with parts of themselves that historically men have never gotten in touch with. And women have a powerful part in this evolution, right? In a lot of ways, women are leading this evolution because women are connected to something spiritual, something deep, something real, something vital that men have historically been disconnected from. And so as men become more available and more prepared to open themselves to that part of themselves and that part of women and their partners, women are able to share something that maybe they've always felt more connected to than men have. And so in some ways they can lead this transformation. That doesn't mean that men don't have any role in leadership or that men don't have any responsibility here. But it means that women have the opportunity to reflect something because they're already a little more connected to that than men are. So I just want to start again by validating that, by acknowledging that, by honoring that. And for all the ladies listening today, saying that, you're not too much, you're not too emotional, you're not too wild, you're not too crazy. You don't need to diminish yourself or adjust yourself to make men more comfortable with you. That's maybe what the old paradigm said you needed to do. But what we really need in today's world are women who are willing to be all of themselves without apology, without needing to adjust themselves to make themselves more palatable, and maybe spark that fire of discomfort in men that creates a transformation, right? Point the finger or shine the light on the masculine insecurity so that it can be seen and so that they can choose to face it rather than avoid it. So that being said, today we're going to talk about all of this. We're going to talk about the core feminine needs. What are they? How do they need to be expressed? What happens when they're not fully expressed? We're going to talk about the masculine conditioning and what's been going on for men that have gotten them into a place where collectively so many men don't know how to create a safe space for these needs to be met. We're going to talk about what women can step into to shine that light, to be that reflection, to lovingly challenge men to be more without becoming their coach or their therapist. Or, we don't want that codependent, I'm now carrying your healing on my back dynamic. What we want are sovereign beings that become powerful reflections for each other and challenge each other into their highest good. So that's today's conversation. It's a big one. It's a powerful one. And I'm looking forward to diving in with everybody. And as I was preparing for today's conversation, I was thinking about something that I was maybe 11 or 12 years old when this happened, but I was at church. And for those of you who know my story, my mom was very, very religious and, church every Sunday, praying before every meal, that kind of thing. And I was at church and one of the leaders, I was in like my boys group at church, and one of the leaders was sharing this. And he was saying that he was sharing from his experience with his wife and the things that, I don't know, maybe they had a fight or a discussion, or I don't know the backstory, what happened with him, but he shared this with our boys group. And, we're like 11, 12-year-old boys. And what he shared was that, when a woman brings you a problem, and he posed the question to the room, he said, as men, what do we want to do? And I don't even know where this came from, but I said out loud, I'm like, we want to fix it. And he's like, yes, exactly. We want to fix it. And he said, and a lot of times that's not what women need from us. What women need from us is just for us to listen. And at the time I remember thinking, well, that's pretty simple. That's pretty easy. I should be able to do that. Right. And as I got older and as I got more into real relationships of my own, I started to realize how challenging that actually is for men. And it is simple in principle, right? It's simple. A woman expresses a need, and rather than needing a man to control or fix it or make it okay or make it palatable, She just simply needs him to hold space for that need to be expressed. But that triggers something in men that the masculine conditioning, and we're going to talk about all of this today, but the masculine conditioning is not prepared to do that. And so while it's simple when you say it like that, and it seems pretty obvious and pretty self-explanatory, it's not something that we as men have been conditioned to do. There's a vulnerability that's activated and triggered in that makes us very uncomfortable. And so something I want to start by saying today is that when the feminine expresses her needs, if the masculine or the man has not been attuned to dealing with his own discomfort, which is something that men are not taught, and we'll explore that in more detail today. But if a man is not attuned to deal with his own discomfort, his reaction is going to be to shut down the need, because it activates a vulnerability in him that he has not learned to deal with, that he has not learned to be okay with. So that's the essence of today's conversation. And I want to really go into some detail with this and, not just illuminate this conversation, but really give some practical insight into how we as men and women can heal together through this narrative. So as I was preparing for today's conversation, I came up with 8 core feminine needs, and there might be a little overlap between them, but I really wanted to lay this out as clearly as possible. And so there are needs of her psyche. There are needs of her emotion. There are needs of her eros, her sensuality, her life force energy. There are needs of vulnerability. There are needs of softness. There are needs of energetic opening, right? Full, authentic expression. There are needs of belonging. And there are needs of rest. And excuse me if I missed something here. I very well may have, but I did my best to be as comprehensive as possible. But in my experience with all the ladies I've worked with and in my relationship with my wife, this is what I've noticed are, some of the basic core essential needs. And so the psyche need, the need of the mind, is to be seen without being fixed, to share openly, to speak her mind, to speak her truth without needing to adjust or shape that truth. The needs of the emotion, to express fully, to feel fully, to cry, to laugh, to fall apart, to be authentic with whatever she's feeling without having that punished or shut down because a man feels like it's too much. The eros, the fire, the sensuality, the life force, vitality, the being turned on by life, by love, by all of it. She needs the ability to bring her fire and to have it held rather than tamed. The vulnerability, right? The need to truly be vulnerable with someone, to be, quote, needy, to be dependent. And that's not weakness when it's chosen. But what often happens, and we'll explore this a little bit, but when it comes to the need of vulnerability, what often happens, especially with the wounded feminine, is she wants to feel that dependence, that depth, that connection so much that she gives it away too early before it's been earned. She gets hurt. And then over time, she gives it away less and less, and there becomes a restriction around it. And we'll explore that a little bit more today. The need for softness, right? To really be able to soften, to make those rough edges a little bit more gentle, to speak softly, to be held, to feel safe in her softness, to not feel that she needs to be strong, that she needs to hold it all together. That energetic opening, that full authentic expression, that ability to fully be herself in all of her energy. Maybe this in some ways could be an encapsulation of all of these needs, right? But the ability to be fully herself, to be fully present in the truth of who she is, and have a man not flinch in that presence. To have a man be able to rejoice or honor or cherish or appreciate that presence rather than having that fullness of her trigger his insecurity. the need for belonging, to be chosen without performing. And what so many women have learned is in order to be chosen, in order to have a man choose her, she needs to conform to some kind of perfect ideal of what men are looking for. She needs to look a certain way and act a certain way and think a certain way and feel a certain way and behave a certain way. And she needs to fit herself into this box of masculine expectation. And as a result, so many women have never felt chosen for who they are authentically. One, because they've never been given space to be that. And two, because even where there might have been space to be that, they've learned that it's not safe to be that. And so there's this double-edged sword of, one, I was never told it was okay to be myself. As a result of that, I've never allowed myself to be myself. So even if somebody wanted to receive all of me and choose me for me, I never give anyone the opportunity to, because I'm too afraid of what would happen if I did. And this final one, the need for rest. Maybe this is similar to what I spoke about earlier with softness, but that need to just rest into something that doesn't collapse. The need to just let go, to surrender, and to be held. So these are the 8 core feminine needs. And as I've spoken about already, but I just want to circle back to it for a moment. Every single one of these needs, to some degree, maybe some more than others, but every single one of these needs will trigger a masculine insecurity. So when the masculine or the man is not integrated and whole within himself, when he doesn't feel the ability to be with all of himself, which we could even say includes his own feminine aspects. We could even say it includes the parts of him that have these same needs. When he has not learned to be with all of these needs within himself, his need to be unconditionally held, his need for vulnerability, his need to be soft, his need to belong and be chosen, right? When he has not learned to honor and validate these parts of himself, when that is reflected to him in a partner, it's going to trigger insecurity. It's going to trigger resistance. It's going to trigger the part of him that wants to control the feminine expression, to put it into a box that feels safer for him. And so this is what's happening in relationships. And again, for all the ladies who are listening today, I know you relate to this. I know you relate to being in relationship with men who felt like all of you was not enough. Or excuse me, who felt like all of you was too much. And there's this interesting dichotomy where if all of me is too much, then that means something about me is also not enough. If I am too much, then I must somehow not be good enough. It's this weird, right? Too much and not enough are two sides of the same thing, but they're not, both of them are taking you away from wholeness. Both of them are taking you away from the certainty that I am good and whole exactly as I am. And I want to say, this isn't a judgment of men. I'm not saying men are bad or men are wrong for doing this. And I think it's important to say that at this point in the conversation, because every single one of us, men and women, we're all living out a world that we inherited. And it's really easy for women to look at men and say, oh, well, they're unevolved, or they're, not emotionally attuned, or they're whatever. It's really easy to do that. But that's really no different than men looking at women and saying they're too emotional, they're too crazy, they need to tone it down, they need to get more grounded. Those are really two sides of the same coin, because where we are here in 2025 today, none of us chose this. And it's so important that we really understand where we are today and why we're here. Because none of us chose this. Men didn't choose to be the way they are. Women didn't choose to be the way they are. We have all inherited this through generations of trauma, through generations of survival being passed down. And where we actually are today is at the spearhead of creation, where conversations like this can actually be had. Like, there was a time when having a conversation like this might get you killed. There are places in the world today where that's still true. So it's important, as we talk about these dynamics, to withhold judgment around it. It's not men's fault. It's not women's fault. There's nobody right here. There's nobody wrong. We are all living a societal and cultural narrative that we've all inherited. None of us chose to be this way. And yet we are this way. And if you're on either side, if you're a man pointing the finger at women, saying that there's something wrong with them, they should be different, they should be better. If you're women doing the same thing to men, you're missing the mark. Because we've all inherited this together. And the only way anybody heals is through love, compassion, and understanding. So as I go into this next piece, I want to really presence that I'm not blaming. I'm not saying it's anybody's fault. I am talking about the nature of what is happening in these interpersonal dynamics in intimate relationships, so that we can see it, so that we can understand where it comes from, and that it will pave the way for healing to occur. But I'm not blaming anyone, because nobody chose this. So what I want to do is go through each of these needs I just named and just point quickly to what happens when these needs are not met. Because I know a lot of the women who are listening to this are going to relate. So first, the needs of the psyche: to be seen, to be heard, to have her thoughts, her mind be fully expressed without censorship. To be seen, to be heard, without being fixed or changed or adjusted. And when this need goes unmet, she starts to edit herself. She questions her own intuition. Every time she shares her truth and it's met with advice or dismissal or correction, she retreats deeper into herself, believing that her inner world is inconvenient or broken. So how many of you relate to that, what I just said? I'm just curious. Just tap that heart a few times if you relate to that. And I want to reiterate this as well, because this isn't just the women who feel this, actually. And I said this earlier, but I want to come back to it. It's not just the women who feel this. It's the feminine side of men as well. Right? The reason that men struggle to hold this space for the women in their lives is because they also struggle to hold this space for themselves. Maybe the feminine or women are a little bit more attuned to this than men are. Maybe naturally they're a little bit more connected to this. But the wound and the need is the same on both sides. So when she shares too much, when she speaks too much, when she's too loud, when she's too thoughtful, when she takes up too much space, and men start to get annoyed, or they start to edit her, they start to try to shut her down. They start to try to say, you need to be different or some other way to make me more comfortable. The second need, emotion, the ability to express fully without being punished or shut down. So when this need is not met, she suppresses tears that could actually cleanse her. She withholds that emotional release because she feels like it's not safe to do it. She swallows her rage. Over time, her emotions become weaponized. So they turn inward as shame or outward as explosion. Because there's not a safe container for those emotions to be expressed. So when her emotionality, I know women hate hearing this, and understandably so. And I know men sometimes say it, and it's just coming from misunderstanding. It's just coming from wounding. But when women are emotional, men call them crazy. But women aren't crazy. They're just deeply connected to something that most men have not allowed themselves to feel. You see, the thing here is that if a man were to allow himself to feel the depth of his emotion the way that so many women can easily connect to it, he would feel crazy. And so when he sees that reflection, he calls it crazy because it's scary. Because he thinks that if he were to let himself feel it that deeply, that he would lose himself in it. And honestly, he probably would. At least for a little while, until he learned how to be with it. And so that mirror, that reflection, when a woman is so deeply connected to an aspect of her being, a vital living force of her essence, and she's letting it come through in tears or in rage or even in ecstasy, he's seeing a living reflection of something that he does not allow himself to touch in himself. And he needs to shut it down. The eros, the life force, the sensuality, the passion, the vitality, the fire. When the needs of her eros are not met, she's told to calm down. Her passion gets labeled as drama. She learns to dim her sensuality, her sexuality, her boldness, her wild instincts. Her fire feels threatening. This isn't something that, it's not hard to see the sexual repression of women. It's not hard to see how men have tried to limit or contain a woman's fire. And the reason for that, if we look at what dull masculinity has reduced sexuality to, we can easily see why feminine sexuality challenges men so much. And I think one of the best ways to look at this is just like mainstream porn. It's just so dense, so basic, so divorced from the deep realized sexuality that, when you have true deep intimacy in a loving and safe partnership, it's a completely different thing. And I'll say this in my own experience as a man and having embraced that in a relationship with my wife. The vulnerability that activates is scary. It activates a level of emotion and vulnerability and feeling in men that men are not equipped to deal with. And so, as a result, men try to reduce sexuality to a dull, dense physical experience. And let me add one other thing to it. Because a lot of men don't truly know how to please a woman sexually. And what ends up happening is the fullness of her sexual needs trigger his insecurity. For her to really express the depth that she wants to experience, the level she wants to go to, how far he could really take her, triggers something in him that he doesn't know he's capable of. There's an energetic mastery that most men have not even begun to tap into. And when a woman is fully expressed in her eros, her sensuality, her sexuality, what she does is she holds that mirror up. And what he feels is inadequacy. And so a woman's sexuality has had to be confined into a small box of what men have felt like they could handle. And again, I want to come back to this because there's no blame here. There's no shame here. There's no guilting. I'm just simply talking about what we've inherited. Both men and women. This is what we've all inherited together. And if we want to get more out of life, if we want to feel more vital, more alive, more expressed, if we want to deepen in partnership, this is what we get to heal together. And so for a woman, it might be the simple fact of, I'm not diminishing my sexuality, my sensuality, my vitality, my life force. And if a man can't handle that, then I'm just going to simply wait for one who can. And holding up that mirror, and that principle actually goes for everything I'm talking about today. And holding up that mirror might be uncomfortable. But what it's going to do is it's going to challenge men to go deeper. Vulnerability, the next one. The surrender. One of the best definitions I've ever heard of vulnerability is opening yourself up for attack. So when this was broken down for me, what was said was, this is a military term, right? Vulnerability is a military term. If you are to leave your platoon or whatever open to attack, you're vulnerable. Now, I don't know if that's the entire essence of the word. I don't know if that's exactly where it comes from, but I thought it was a really powerful illustration when I heard this, right? To be vulnerable is to leave myself open to attack. And maybe this is where in relationship we experience the most erotic, vital, passionate, alive essence or energy that we can possibly experience. Because if I leave myself open to attack, if I give you the opportunity to hurt me, but you choose to hold me instead, that's everything right there. Right? That's what we all want. We want to open ourselves up on that deepest level where somebody could really hurt me if they want to, but instead of choosing to hurt me, they choose to love me. They choose to hold me. They choose to protect me. That's what we're all craving on the deepest level. And so, what I see happening for the women I work with, let me say this, men are generally speaking vulnerability adverse. They never want to be vulnerable under any circumstance. And like, I'll just say this. I was a young boy once. I was in high school. Like, if I were to walk into my high school locker room and be vulnerable, I would have gotten the shit beat out of me, right? Like growing up with my father, with the men in my life, like the quote elders of my circle, which them being elders doesn't make them enlightened, by the way. They were far from it. But growing up in the culture of masculinity that I grew up in with my father, with the other men who were around, with the boys I went to school with, you couldn't be vulnerable. If there was even a hint of vulnerability, at best, you would be ridiculed and humiliated. At worst, you would literally get the shit beat out of you. Women, on the other hand, and I want to say women have gotten a degree of that too, maybe not in the same toxic masculine way that men have, but women have gotten a degree of that too. But women have also been more encouraged to be vulnerable. You know, I often give the illusion or the illustration where, you know, when we're kids, boys are given toy guns to play with and women are given Barbies, or girls are given Barbies. Right? And so you have little boys pretending to shoot each other and you have little girls playing relationship. So there's something in that where women have been more encouraged to embrace vulnerability than men have. The need for vulnerability is a fundamental human need. It's on both sides. It's across the board. It's something everybody has. But women, generally speaking, are more connected to it. And so what I see happening for women, they're connected to the fact that, like, that's what I want in a relationship. I want that deep, open-hearted, full, connected, authentic expression with someone. I want to feel that. I want that love that penetrates my soul. And they haven't necessarily been taught the discernment that says, well, there are times when vulnerability is appropriate and there are times when it's not. A lot of women haven't been taught that vulnerability is something that needs to be earned, not given. And so what I see happening with a lot of women is there's this spectrum where maybe when you're younger, maybe in middle school or high school or in college or in your younger years, you fall in love and you go all in. You make yourself completely available. And then you get hurt a few times because the middle school and high school and college boys are not equipped to handle that level of vulnerability. And so then what happens is you vacillate to the opposite extreme. And you start being less and less and less vulnerable. You start to get it in your bones that vulnerability is not safe. And rather than developing more discernment around it, you develop more more repression around it. That's the wound overcorrecting itself. Similar is the need for softness. And what happens often is women end up equating softness with danger. And, we live in a masculine world. The masculine energy is the driving force of the entire world right now. It always has been, as far back as history goes, as far as we can tell. And so what happens is, rather than being soft, women build armor. They become hyper independent, hyper capable, which has its own double-edged sword, because if a woman doesn't feel like she can be soft, she overcorrects by becoming hyper independent, hyper capable, which then makes men feel more insecure, which then has them retaliate and reinforces the idea that softness isn't safe. And these two wounds just continue to polarize each other. The energetic openness that I spoke about, the being fully embodied in all of her energy. And as I said earlier, this energetic openness may be really a culmination of all these needs in one. The ability to be fully embodied in the entire energy of her truth and have it be expressed without permission, without apology, without needing to validate it, without needing to justify it. And to feel that a masculine presence can embrace all of this and hold all of this without flinching. And what happens often is women stop trusting men with their depth. She starts to hide the most tender parts of herself. She starts to conform to an energetic expression that is acceptable. She starts to feel that no one stays when she expresses the fullness of herself, so she adjusts to become something that someone will stay with. Which ties right into this next need, which is belonging. The need to be chosen without effort. Right? Rather than being chosen for how pretty I am, or how smart I am, or how much I do, or how good I am, or how much I conform to what somebody else wants from me. It's the need, and again, this is a human need. Men have this too. But it's the need to be all of me and have someone choose all of me. And I think this is the thing, right? As long as you are withholding parts of yourself to try to garner love from the external world, there is always going to be a part of you that feels dead inside. There's always going to be a part of you that just feels empty. And so many of us fall into this trap where we try to do and be so perfect, so good, so much of what others want from us. We try to do everything right and say the right thing and feel the right thing and be the right thing. And sometimes we get married under that premise. Sometimes we start a family under that premise. Sometimes we build a whole life, a career and a marriage and every aspect under that premise, and wonder why no matter how much we get, it never feels like it's enough. And the reason is because that entire life that we built and all of these external things that look so perfect on the surface, every single one of them is really a reminder of how we can't be ourselves. How the truth of who we are is too much. And as I was talking about earlier, there's this paradox that if the truth of who I am is too much, then that must mean somehow I'm not enough. If my authentic essence is too much, then somehow that means I'm just not good enough. And this final one, the need for rest. Similar to what I spoke about with softness, the need to let go, to relax, to fall apart, to stop being strong, to stop holding it all together. And I actually think so many women feel this is the moment I stop holding it all together is the moment everything falls apart. That if I let myself fall apart, nobody would be there to catch me. Even if I'm in a relationship, even if I'm married. If I fall apart, that's it. It's over. And so she is always strong. She's always holding it all together. She's always perfect. She's carrying the weight of the world, even though her body's screaming for relief. Because she doesn't feel safe enough to just let go, to just relax, to just surrender. Now, as I've said already, but I want to come back to it, I'm not blaming men. I'm not blaming women. I'm not pointing the finger at anyone. I'm saying this is a context that we've all inherited. It was passed down by our parents, and it was back as far as we can see. So there's no blame here. There's just simply the understanding that this is what we've inherited. Someone said once, we didn't start the fire, but it's our job to put it out. And I think that's so true. And so what needs to happen is a balancing. There needs to be a rebalancing here. And if the trajectory of our history has been an unworthy or toxic form of masculinity, and when I say that, what I'm pointing to is domination, control, repression, disconnection from our emotion, a need to preserve myself at the expense of others. So while the maybe toxic feminine or the wounded feminine is hyper codependent, the wounded masculine is hyper independent. And what our world has been built on is this type of hyper independence. I don't need anyone. I don't need anything. I can handle it all by myself. I take care of myself. I make sure I get what I want, even at the expense of others. I'm disconnected from my emotion. I'm disconnected from my essence. I'm living in my, or not living in my truth. I'm disconnected from the truth. And I'm overcompensating for that by my ability to control and dominate and force outcomes. I'm getting validation through what I can do versus what I am. See, everything I'm talking about here are expressions of masculinity. And there's a healthy version of all of this. Being independent is not wrong. Being independent is healthy. Hyper independence is unhealthy. being so concerned with my own self that I'm disconnected from how my self exists in relationship to everyone else's self. That's unhealthy. Being self-interested while trying to find a way that I can win and bring everyone else with me, that's a healthy expression. And so if our world, our history, if humanity up until this point has really been driven by a dominant energy of unhealed masculinity, of which men and women have all embodied to a degree, the medicine for that, what's going to balance that is healthy femininity, healthy feminine energy. And so that's the integration. That's the interdependence. That's the compassion and understanding, seeing things through a compassionate lens. It's the willingness to nurture. It's the willingness to consider all sides of the conversation, all sides of the narrative. You see, with all of these needs I've been talking about, I've said this several times today, but I want to come back to it now. The reason the masculine struggles to be with the feminine in her deepest needs, in those most vulnerable aspects of herself, is because he's not comfortable with those same aspects of himself. The reason he struggles to hold her vulnerability is because he's been taught that vulnerability is not safe, that vulnerability is weakness. And so what needs to happen on both sides, on the masculine side and on the feminine side, is the willingness to embrace healthy, empowered feminine energy, which is nurturing, compassion, emotional attunement, understanding, the willingness to be in the nuance and the presence of all sides of the conversation, to be attuned to my needs, but also the needs of others, to move forward in a way that I bring everyone with me. That's what the healthy feminine is masterful. That's her area of mastery. And I don't have time today to go into a whole discussion of masculine, feminine, the toxic aspects of each. That's not really what today's message is about. But I want to acknowledge this maybe awkward position that so many women are in. Because women always ask this question. Or maybe it's not more of a question, maybe it's more of a frustration that's expressed. She might say, "It's not my job to make him better. It's not my job to make him be the man that he needs to be." And yes and no. So here's what I want to say about that. It's not your job to be his coach. It's not your job to be his therapist. It's not your job to enter into this kind of codependent dynamic where you are carrying the work for him. At the same time, the medicine the world needs right now is healthy feminine energy. And so if that's the medicine that the world needs right now, the simple truth is that women have more direct access to that than men do. It's going to be easier, generally speaking. Now, let me address a nuance here. There are some men who are going to access that easier than some women. Right? There are some men who are going to be more connected to that than some women. So I'm not saying this applies to everyone. But what I'm saying is generally, women are going to have easier, more direct access to that, generally. So what does that mean? How can women empower themselves and empower men without becoming a coach or a therapist? And the answer is simple but not easy. I've addressed 8 feminine needs today. So 2 things about these needs. And this is really the coaching that I would offer women in today's session. Be relentless about your need to have these needs met. Be unapologetic about it. You can be compromising, but not compromising to the degree where you end up sacrificing. So you own these needs. There's a level at which you require these needs to be met in relationships, while at the same time acknowledging that not all men are in a place where they will be able to meet those needs. And so what this becomes is an unwavering connection to your truth. An unwavering connection to you honoring the full and complete essence of who you are. An unwillingness to deviate from that. And so you might get into some kind of a relationship with a man, generally romantic, although there's a level of this that could be expressed at the workplace. There's a level of this that could be expressed with your family. But let's just, for simplicity, we'll keep it in a romantic context. You get involved with a man. You show up in the fullness of who you are, unapologetic, uncompromising, unwilling to deviate from the truth that you have these real, sincere needs to be met in your wholeness, in the complete essence of who you are, and you're not deviating from that. And what happens when you live in that, when you stand in that, is you become a living, breathing invitation for a man to heal and grow in relationship with you. And this is what I'm going to say. When you live in that, when you operate in that, every single man you come in contact with is going to be better because of it. That doesn't mean he's going to completely transform. Sometimes your light is going to be so bright that it's literally going to blast him out of the room. And he's going to leave with something to think about. Whether he's willing to admit it or not, he's going to leave with the awareness that I had a freaking goddess come into my life and I wasn't able to access whatever I needed to access to be able to hold her. And he may repress that awareness and he may laugh it off and talk shit about it and avoid it. But even if he does that, it's still there. Even if he makes it a joke, even if he dismisses it, even if he tries to run from it, he can't erase it. And somehow, some way, you've planted a seed that is going to grow. Maybe not right now, maybe not in relationship with you, but it's there. As you become, again, relentless in that, unapologetic about it, you start to discern more and more clearly, more and more quickly, when a man is able to meet you and when he's not, at what level he's able to meet you and what level he's not. You start to become more attracted to men who have the ability to receive that presence and less attracted to men who don't. This is maybe a little bit different conversation, but I just want to say this quickly. When your internal narrative was, I'm too much or not enough, I need to shrink myself to make myself acceptable, when that's the essence of who you believed you were also attracted to men who expected that from you because there was an energetic resonance there. So the more you accept your wholeness, the more you unapologetically, relentlessly embody your wholeness, the more you become attracted to men who feel the same about it. Last thing I want to say about this. In the space between where you're maybe navigating this, and maybe there isn't a man in your life who's ready to hold all of this, who has the capacity or the ability to embrace all of this. And you're living in that space between. What's essential is your willingness to acknowledge these needs, honor these needs, trust these needs, and do everything you can to meet them yourself. So you are meeting yourself on every level: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. There's no part of you that you are rejecting yourself. That's essential, because you've got to understand psychologically how this works. If there's a part of you that you say is too much, if there's a part of you that you say is not appropriate, if there's a part of you that you are rejecting, how that's going to translate in relationships is you are going to be energetically bonded to people who also reject that part of you. You're going to bond emotionally and energetically with people who see you the same way you see yourself. And so this is why it's so essential. Even I often say, like, sometimes if you've been dating or in and out of relationships a lot, and you're trying to find a relationship, sometimes the most important thing to do is to take a period of solitude. Because sometimes what's needed is for you to build a stronger relationship with yourself, for you to acknowledge, embrace, and meet all these parts of yourself, so that when you bring yourself into the dating world, you're doing it from a deep sense of self-acceptance. You take that period of solitude to break the pattern between always trying to be what everyone else wanted you to be and really getting connected to who you are. And being unapologetic about that. Learning to hold and meet every single aspect of yourself. Because I want to say this, just as much as there are men out there who want a woman to make herself smaller, more palatable, easier to deal with, there are also men who really want a woman who's owning all of her energy, who want a woman who's being the full, complete expression of herself. And the thing is, if you're showing up as the woman who's trying to adjust herself to fit into a mold that she thinks she's supposed to be, and you meet one of those men who want your full expression, that polarity is not going to be there. That attraction, that magnetism is not going to be there. Likely on either side. Because you're going to be trying to fit into what you think he wants, and he's going to feel the inauthenticity of that, and it's going to be a turnoff. So I want to go back to the question, or again, maybe I said earlier, maybe it's not a question, maybe it's a frustration. I hear women say, it's not my job to make him better. And I'll end with this. It's not your job to make him better. But him becoming better is something that happens naturally when you are living fully from your truth. Him becoming better is something you activate in being true to yourself. So no, it's not a job. It's not something you need to do. It's something you are. It's a presence you carry that literally awakens the divinity in the masculine. That's what it is. And so no, I'm not asking women to become something less than who they are to try to get more from men. It's actually the opposite. I'm inviting women to step into the totality of who you are, to challenge more from men. And yes, when you do that, some men are not going to be ready for it. But even when they're not ready for it, you've stirred something up in him that is undeniable. And he can try to run from it, but he cannot escape it. And that's the power of the divine feminine. And as I said earlier, that's the medicine that our world needs right now. So I want to thank everybody for being with me in today's conversation. If you've stuck it through this far, there must be something in you that is really aching for truth. There must be something in you that wants to be expressed, that is asking for that permission to express it. And I hope that I've offered you that today. So thank you so much for being with me today, everybody. So much love, so many blessings, and I'll be back with you next week. Lots of love. Thanks again for checking out the show. Please subscribe on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on the most. And I would love it so much if you leave a review and tell people what you think of us. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram @TheLivingRelationship to connect more closely. And I'm grateful to be supporting you on your journey to love.